observed is that over the course of the past 40 years, the presence of older workers inside firms increased a lot. And this had negative consequences on the ability of younger workers to progress through the firm's hierarchy. But these challenges were not the same for younger men and younger women. Younger men were much more likely than younger women, let's say 40 years ago, to occupy higher ranked kind of positions. This position got progressively occupied by older workers, and so younger workers got crowded out over time from these good jobs, but younger men got crowded out at a much higher rate than younger women. And so you have increased gender parity inside firms, but a big component of this gender parity is younger men losing opportunities over time and falling toward younger women in firms' hierarchies and in the wage levels. It's hard to tell. I think that the real answer to this question is it depends, because there are going to be forces that work in opposite directions, so we still don't know which one is going to prevail. On the one end, we have the baby boomers, right, that they're going to retire. They already started retiring, and they're going to retire completely in the next few years. The baby boomer generation obviously was much, much larger than the generations that come after that. And so what you're going to have is that like a decrease in the presence of older workers in the firms just due to the natural progression of cohorts outside the market. This should help younger workers. On the other end, you have a lengthening of the careers of workers, right? This is not changing. In fact, it's still increasing. Older workers are still kind of increasing the amount of time that is spent inside the labor force. And therefore, it's hard to tell which one is going to prevail. Another thing that we don't know is how's the growth prospect for most firms in high-income economies. Are we going to get like a huge increase in growth thanks to new technologies like AI? This is obviously going to help everyone, including younger workers. Or we're not going to see a huge change in the growth projections. Then this is going to, maintain the situation as it is right now. So it's hard to tell. Competing forces at play. Education in and of itself, in my opinion, at least based on the data we've seen, is not a ticket in some sense to avoid these problems. Meaning, it's not that if you're going to go to college, if you're going to go even to post-college education, you're going to be able to avoid the effects of an aging workforce on your own career. Why? Because aging, like the workforce aging, is affecting all types of workers. It's not that only, let's say, workers without a college education are staying longer in their job. Everyone is staying longer in their job. And so education in and of itself, not a solution. However, there's one thing to consider, I think, here is that education and skill transfer is going to be, I think, one possible solution for this problem, meaning now we have many more older workers inside firms that decide to stay there for much longer. They are a wealth of information, of skills, of experience, and firms need to find a way to transfer these skills in a more efficient way toward younger workers. The answer to the question is I haven't seen in my research directly, but I would like to spin this question around. Like, can we think about policies directed to aging that can affect possibly the gender pay gap? And I think here we need to think strategically about what we do, as countries in the next years. Why? Because based on our data, the situation right now is younger workers are kind of doing worse than before. There's now more parity among younger men and younger women in their entry conditions in the labor markets, right? So now what's going to happen is, well, if we are going to try to alleviate the situation of younger workers, if we're trying to improve their outcomes, right, we need to make sure that we don't go back to the situation we had 40 years ago, right, where younger men had much, much better outcomes than younger women. We need to try to keep this newly found parity that we have now between younger men and women, even if we are going to enact policies that might help younger people. In some sense, all the policies that we had in the past 40 years to improve gender equality should come should be useful and helpful in order to make sure that we maintain this parity when we improve their outcomes. As a labor economist, I look specifically about how my field studied this type of question in the past. and the classic setting in which we studied the relationship between younger and older workers is the entrance of the baby boomers in the labor market around the mid-60s, more or less. And my feeling is that we were studying these questions in a setting that is not relevant anymore. It's a setting with very high growth, very high economic growth, where we thought that maybe this growth would have kept increasing for a long time. I feel that the lessons that we learned at that point were a little bit incomplete and not able to describe the situation that we are living right now in high-income economies. So for me, it is now the time to really get answers to the effect of this type of policy instead of looking at the past.